So for those of you who I have not met yet, my name is John Kiper and I am running for governor of New Hampshire. I'm a lifelong New Hampshire resident, grew up in Stratham, graduated from Exeter High School in 2001. After high school, I traveled around the world for a bit, studied in Australia, came back to the US, started my own publishing company, published some music and some books that I'd written, and eventually opened up my own restaurant called Johnny Boston's International, which is in Newmarket, in 2015. After I bought the building that my restaurant is in and moved into a 740 square foot apartment above the restaurant, I decided that I needed to get involved in local politics, because my primary issue was that we did not have a lot of parking in my town, and over the last several years my town has gotten more popular. We've had some real great improvements through the mills being renovated, our downtown revitalization program, and now we have way more restaurants, but no more parking. So I got involved in the ZBA and the town council and a couple other boards, and quickly realized the reason that we didn't have any money for parking was because we were spending so much money for our school. And I also learned that basically New Hampshire's system for funding our schools is regressive, in which poorer towns like Newmarket pay the most of their income towards public education, and the richest towns in New Hampshire pay the least amount of their income towards public education. And this leaves towns like mine without the money for the infrastructure for my business to grow. Now, not only do we not have enough parking, but we have neglected housing for the last couple of decades, and we do not have enough housing for my younger employees, who are frankly leaving the state to find better, more affordable housing. And my younger customers are also just moving out of the state because they can't afford to live here anymore. And I'm finding myself wanting to move out of my 740 square foot apartment so that I can have more children and expand my family. And I frankly am struggling to do that in New Hampshire. And as I've traveled around our state, I've realized and learned that many towns and cities are in the same situation that I am in which we're investing so much into our schools that we do not have money to invest in the infrastructure to grow our economies. This is true in Newmarket and Berlin, in Rochester, Somersworth, Claremont. And I think we all need to come to realize that the housing problem and the school funding and property taxes are all linked. Your property taxes are frankly never going to come down until we find another way to fund the bulk of our public education system. As I said before, 70% of the bill for public education comes from local taxpayers. We need to switch that formula, and the state actually, this has been hashed out in the courts, and the state knows that we do not have a fair system, and it's frankly illegal. It's not constitutional the way that we're funding our schools. So we've got to find a new way to do it. And this is the only way we're going to get property taxes down, is by funding the schools in a different way. And here's the thing. The high cost of property taxes is affecting our housing, because number one, housing is more expensive. I talked to a guy the other day who was living in Claremont. He moved to Vermont because his same house in Vermont was literally $500 a month cheaper because of Claremont's high property taxes. Also, not only is it making the houses more expensive, but towns and cities are reluctant to build houses for families because those children will drive up their property taxes. That's just a simple fact. I have a son who's about to enter third grade. I pay $8,000 a year in taxes for my building. It costs $17,000 to educate one kid at Newmarket School. So my taxes alone do not even cover the tuition for my son. This system is just not sustainable, because what's happening is elderly people who are on fixed incomes cannot afford the tax increases. And frankly, I cannot afford the tax increases that we're seeing. It's making it very hard for me to make a profit in the state of New Hampshire, and I've been very tempted to leave. But the reality is I've lived in this state for my entire life. And am I going to get pushed out because of a system that was created literally decades ago that is not working anymore? Not without a fight, I'm not. And that's what I'm here to do, is to fight for young people who want to live in this state and who grew up in this state and belong here, frankly. And we're getting pushed out because the only houses that are being built, you either need an income from a job in Massachusetts or in Boston, or you need a retirement income from out of state. Those are the people that are moving here. And who's getting pushed out is our young people. over 50% of graduating high schoolers leave the state and do not come back. Part of the reason is because they're going to college in other places that are more affordable. This is an issue as well. But the biggest problem is even if they wanted to come home and find houses, they could not afford to do so. And really, this is going to fall on baby boomers the hardest, because we do not have the LNAs and the nurses and the firefighters that we need to care for this aging population. And people are just going to get to a point where they're going to have to leave. You've got to think about this. The baby boomers in the next decade are going to require the most medical care that they've gotten in their entire lives. If we don't have the nurses, the LNAs, the doctors to care for them, it's going to literally crash the system. And no one is talking about this except me. So it's really important that people understand how complex the situation is. Now, to make it even more complex, everyone else running for governor has taken a pledge that they will not create an income tax or a sales tax. Here's the issue with that. The Democrats spent $500,000 studying school funding. And we discovered there are only 3 ways to fund schools in a way that's adequate and fair. And that is an income tax, a sales tax, or a property tax. Now, we tried a property tax statewide. And under a Democratic governor, that system was ended because the towns that had to pay it said it was unfair and that they didn't want to. Well, here's the reality. Any system in which we are going from a regressive system with the poor paying the most and the rich paying the least is going to change who pays more. And the people who pay more are probably going to complain about it. And if we do an income tax, an area with more income is going to pay more. If we do a sales tax, an area with more shops is going to contribute more. It's just the nature of taxation. It's also important to understand that all taxes are frankly income taxes at the end of the day. Our property tax is just a tax on your income based on the value of your property. A sales tax would just be a tax on your income based on how much you consumed. And an income tax would just be an income tax. The reason that I hate the pledge so much is because as a business owner, as a restaurant owner, I collect sales tax for the state of New Hampshire called rooms and meals. I also pay an income tax called business enterprise tax. So for the last decade, every time someone has said that there's no sales tax or income tax in the state of New Hampshire, I get more and more angry because that's just not true. We have sales tax and we have income tax. They are just levied to certain people in certain circumstances. If you're an LLC, you pay it. If you're making millions of dollars for a corporation, you do not. You know, I collect sales tax. The shop owner down the street who sells widgets does not have to collect that sales tax. I did not open a restaurant to be a tax collector for the state of New Hampshire, yet I do it. Here's the reality. The state of New Hampshire needs sources of revenue. It needs taxes, and that's why we have rooms and meals, and we have business enterprise tax and business profit tax. I challenge the other people who are running, who would say that we do not have an income tax or sales tax, eliminate rooms and meals, or eliminate the business profit tax, see what happens. This state would collapse further because the fact is the state needs revenue. And the fact is, to constitutionally fund our schools, we need a new source of revenue. Now, I'm not suggesting an income tax or a sales tax. What I'm suggesting is for the next year after I take office, we have a discussion statewide about what kind of tax the majority of us want to have. It could be an income tax, sales tax, property tax, or any combination of these. There's also other types of taxes we never talk about, such as consumption tax is one that I like. We could have a goods and services tax, which is what they do in Australia, a value-added tax, which they do in Europe. There's many types of taxes. Frankly, we could make the toll coming up from Massachusetts $500. There's obviously a reason why that's not a good idea, but my point is there's a million ways that the state could generate revenue. We just have to agree on one, okay? And that's why I'm really the only candidate that is not in this to maintain the status quo. You can vote for whoever you want, but if you do not vote for me, I guarantee you we will be in the exact same position when it comes to school funding and property taxes in 2026. Why? Because you cannot even have this discussion without discussing an income tax and a sales tax. That's my spiel. Thank you very much.